This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV. We're here today with Captain Andrew Kinsey, and Andrew is a senior marine risk consultant at Allianz Risk Consulting. And Andrew, first and foremost, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so Andrew, these are obviously some very interesting times, and I think in COVID-19, the maritime industry and many industry face an unprecedented business interruption. When you look at the situation today, I want your insights. How do you see the pandemic, its impact on maritime, and where we are?
At the current stage of this, I equate it to weathering the initial storm surge, almost like we're in the eye, and now we've still got to deal with the backside of the storm. We work together tremendously, I feel, in across responsibilities to ensure that the first month, 2 months of this, we were able to adapt. But going forward, we're going to continue to see impacts across the supply chain, and we're going to be faced with this new normal, and especially if we're dealing with a situation where we'll have global flare-ups. Because with maritime being such a global industry, if it's anywhere in the world, we are going to have to adapt to it.
One of the biggest public-facing impacts has been the treatment of crews, the treatment of seafarers that have been stuck on ships for a very long time. What kind of advice are you giving to ship owners as far as ensuring that their crew are ready for service?
There's several key aspects of this. One is for them to start to think of outside the box. In the mid-'80s, we had dealt with, under the U.S. flag, some of the government chartered flights to Diego Garcia, where you would have a complete repatriation crew. And this is something that I think is applicable now. Look at the option of having the hubs of crew changes and look at chartered flights. In addition, be proactive. If you can get a crew together, get them together, quarantine them, and then go through that 2-week period and then transport them. I know that has been going on several reliefs already. The other important aspect of this is that there's two sides to this. One is the crews that are on board. The other is the crews that are waiting to go to work. I know from personal experience that when a sailor's ready to go back to sea, he's normally pretty broke. So we have to think about this. We really need to understand the whole aspect of it. Not only do we have to take care of the crews that are on board, we have to take care of the crews that are coming on board. We have to make sure that they retain that manpower, because we're already facing a global shortage of qualified seafarers. And if they find something else, they might not be coming back. The other key aspect of this is to reach out to the families of those seafarers who are on board. Unlike the military, where you have a base support or units deployed, that doesn't happen with seafarers. As you know, they're on their own and the families are on their own. And as a result, it's a very lonely lifestyle for a maritime spouse.
Okay. Well, as I said, lots of different issues that could be talked about, and the crews are the crews, both the ones at sea and at shore, are number one and 1A. Another one, and that's also included in your report, is in respect to surveys. Many of the classification societies, many different organizations are moving forward fast on this whole digitalization trend and the ability that comes with remote surveys. In your opinion, is that technology mature enough, or is it available today to fill the void of having people actually do the inspections and surveys?
I would equate it to being in the beta phase on that, I think is applicable. Once again, shoreside, yes, they've got IT departments. They can get a vendor out there to upgrade servers. They've also got people. The key to this is, once again, you're putting more tax on the vessel and the crew, because somebody's still got to do the teardown. They've got to do the measurements. They've got to get the data in order to send it to the remote person who is going to do the evaluation. And guess who that is? That's the crew. And that's kind of the key to it here. We're talking about, oh yeah, we can do it remote, and we are looking at instances where we're using cloud-based technology for surveys. But we have to understand that it's still the same people on board who have to collect that data.
Okay. So obviously the crew relief is a big issue. The inspection and surveys are a big issue. I know there are several more, but if you had to just pick one that you see as the biggest challenge today, can you say what that is and discuss why?
Right now, for the vessels, the biggest challenge I believe is it's a disruption of routes, disruption of established routines. When we're starting to see ultra large container vessels being sent via Cape Town, when we're bypassing Suez, when we're having ports skipped or ro-ros combining ports, these are all things that get a ship outside of its normal, regular routine. And seamen are creatures of habit. We're used to having those charts corrected for that run, especially on liner services. So when you start to take on more of a tramp role, let's say, we're disrupting a lot of things in the normal shipboard routine. Also, the disruption of shoreside support then. We don't have courier services. We can't be doing bunker testing properly. So how do we get stores? So in addition to the crewing issues, if we're not getting shoreside support, I mean, we've all seen the shortages in the grocery store. Well, try bringing on 30 or 40 or 45 days of fresh frozen and, veg, FFV. It's tough. So it's all those things, especially as you go on to new routes. Changes in routine put in potential for complications.
Okay. Okay. So, obviously a lot of our discussion has focused on the ships that are still operating. As you know, though, a lot of ships are not operating. But can you just give us a little insight from where you sit as to the actual percentage of vessels that are now in layup?
I think it's fascinating because I'm dating myself, but I can remember when I got off one of my last cadet ships and I was got off out of St. Theodore, drove down to Athens and past Piraeus and saw all those tankers stacked. And I said, I'm getting into this industry. This is not a good sign. And back then, then in the mid '80s, I was on a South China Sea shuttle when Sanko, the banks called their note, and you saw those Sanko vessels tucked into every cove throughout the South China Sea and up through the coast of Japan. But this is different. This isn't just Hunyai, this is everybody. And if you take a look at marine traffic, which is an amazing resource, and AIS is one of those things that has changed our industry landscape forever. And you start to look at certain ports, Malaysia or South China Sea, the approaches to Horsburgh Light, it's a parking lot out there. It's amazing. Or down through Malacca. I mean, you've got fjords up in Norway that have 8 ro-ros stacked up. Nobody's seen anything like it. So as far as the whole numbers, I don't know. But if you start looking at the number of cruise ships that are stacked up off Miami and the Bahamas right now, it's a lot of them.
Obviously, anyone who's been in the business for any appreciable amount of time has seen the ups and the downs. And a lot of ship owners obviously have had to put their vessels in various stages of layup. If you had a couple salient pieces of advice for vessel owners who are putting their vessels in layup to ensure that A, they're protected in the best way possible, and B, that they're as ready as possible when they need to turn the switch and bring them back on, what would that advice be?
It would be take your time and use all the resources available. The offshore drilling industry several years ago went through a very similar cold stacking, and there are some excellent resources out there. So there's some consultants who have done it, and the applicability to the cruise ships as well is, a lot of the same services, a lot of the same systems. So, use your best people, but then also realize there's consultants out there who have done this, and they've done it recently. I mean, I can remember when the old big tankers were laid up in Indonesia, and when they broke them out, the ones that were laid up, I know some of the chiefs who had laid them out when they were thirds, when they got broken out, the ones that were put to bed well, they got underway. They had a good life. Unfortunately, sometimes the ones that aren't put away well, their only voyage is to a beach somewhere, and it's not a good end for them. So use those resources, think about it, understand where it is and how long you might be there. Location is also key.
Awesome.
Shoreside support is critical, and weather. We're looking at some fascinating, tied into all this. We also look at changing global weather patterns, severity of storms. So, I look at some of the stuff in Malaysia right now that's getting stacked, or you even look in Manila Bay, and that's not the best. Forget about, you start looking at the Eastern Seaboard and you're looking at Port Everglades, Miami, and the Bahamas. This is the start of hurricane season. You don't want to have a whole bunch there.
It's very good. So, Andrew, I truly appreciate your time again. As I said, as we started this, both in writing for the magazine and also now for the video session. So I hope you're doing well. And again, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay. This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV.